Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Sentinel station, watching the massive alien vessel approach Earth. Her hands gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. After 200 years of searching the stars, humanity had finally found proof they were not alone. Now, looking at the enormous ship that dwarfed their largest space stations, Sarah wondered if finding them was a mistake. The ship was beautiful in a terrible way. It stretched for miles, covered in silver metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Thousands of smaller ships flew around it like birds circling a whale. The Valdros Imperium had arrived, and they had come in force. "Admiral, the Valdros delegation is ready to board," Lieutenant Marcus Hayes said behind her. His voice shook slightly. The young man had every right to be nervous. This was the most important moment in human history. Sarah turned away from the window and straightened her uniform. "Let's go meet our visitors." The docking bay was filled with Earth's best and brightest. Scientists, diplomats, military leaders, and representatives from every major nation stood in careful formation. They had argued for weeks about who would speak first, what to say, how to stand. In the end, they had settled on Secretary General Amara Okonkwo as the voice of humanity. The airlock hissed open. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. The Valdros were humanoid, but only barely. They stood 8 feet tall with skin that shimmered between blue and purple. 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern dominated their faces. They wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid metal, flowing and changing color with each movement. The leader wore a crown of white crystal that floated above his head without any visible support. "I am Emperor Thexkar IX, divine ruler of the Valdros Imperium, Lord of 2,000 worlds, keeper of the eternal flame." His voice came from a translator device that made it sound like thunder rolling across mountains. "You are the humans of Earth." It was not a question. Secretary General Okonkwo stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Your Imperial Majesty, on behalf of humanity, welcome to Earth. We are honored by your presence. We have prepared—" "Yes, yes." The Emperor waved a long-fingered hand dismissively. "You have prepared gifts and speeches. You wish to show us what you have accomplished. Proceed." The words were polite, but the tone made Sarah's teeth clench. The Emperor sounded like a parent humoring a child who wanted to show off a crayon drawing. Over the next 3 hours, Earth's representatives presented everything they could think of. Dr. Robert Martinez explained humanity's scientific achievements. Professor Lin Wei spoke about human art, music, and literature. General Thomas Adeyemi demonstrated humanity's space exploration efforts. They showed the Emperor images of Earth's cities, its diversity, its history from cave paintings to space stations. Emperor Thexkar watched it all with what could only be described as mild amusement. His 4 eyes never widened in surprise or interest. He occasionally nodded like a teacher acknowledging a student's correct but unremarkable answer. When the presentations finished, Secretary General Okonkwo smiled hopefully. "Your Majesty, we hope this demonstrates that humanity is ready to join the galactic community as equals. We have much to offer and much to learn." The Emperor's mouth opened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp and too numerous. It took Sarah a moment to realize he was smiling. "Equals," he repeated, and then he laughed. It was not a cruel laugh, which somehow made it worse. It was the laugh of an adult who finds a child's innocent statement adorable. "Oh, little humans, you truly do not understand." He gestured, and one of his attendants brought forward a flat device. It glowed with soft blue light and displayed images that moved and changed. "This is a learning tablet we give to Valdros children at the age of 3 solar cycles. It contains the basic fundamentals of mathematics, physics, engineering, and biology." He held it out toward Secretary General Okonkwo. "I gift this to your species. Study it well. Perhaps in a few thousand years you will begin to approach the level of civilization." The silence in the docking bay was absolute. Sarah felt hot anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain still. "Your Majesty," Okonkwo said carefully, "we do not understand." "Are you saying—" "I am saying that you are children, Secretary General. Impressive children, yes. You have reached space travel using primitive fusion drives in only 10,000 years of civilization. That is remarkable for such a young species." The Emperor's tone was genuinely complimentary, which made his next words cut deeper. "But the Valdros Imperium has stood for 50,000 of your years. We have uplifted 47 species from primitive states to civilization. We have seen thousands of worlds and billions of lives. You are the youngest children we have ever encountered. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, unable to contain himself. With respect, Your Majesty, humanity has achieved fusion power. We achieved that 60,000 years ago. Artificial intelligence, 42,000 years ago. Your proudest achievement is our ancient history. The Emperor was not angry, just stating facts. You have potential, humans. Great potential. But you are not ready to stand beside the established species of the galaxy. Then what are you proposing? General Adeyemi asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. The Valdros Imperium extends an offer to humanity. We will take Earth and all human colonies under our protection. You will become a protectorate species. We will guide you, teach you, and protect you from the dangers of the galaxy that you are not yet equipped to face. And in return? Sarah heard herself asking. The Emperor's 4 eyes focused on her. In return, you will follow Imperium law. You will contribute resources to the greater good. You will not build military vessels or engage in independent diplomacy with other species. You will learn and grow under our guidance until such time as you are deemed ready for full membership in the Imperium. How long would that take? Okonkwo asked quietly. 3,000 to 5,000 years, typically. Though given your enthusiasm, perhaps only 2,000 for humanity. The number hit like a physical blow. 2,000 years of being treated as children. 2,000 years of submission. And if we refuse? General Adeyemi's hand had moved unconsciously toward where his sidearm would normally be. For the first time, the Emperor's expression hardened. Then you will be classified as an unguided species. The Imperium cannot allow dangerous children to play with weapons they do not understand. We would be forced to implement corrective measures. He paused. I have seen the records of your world wars, General. Millions dead from weapons you barely understood. Nuclear fire used against your own kind. You are a danger to yourselves. We cannot allow you to become a danger to others. So we submit or you attack us, Sarah said flatly. We prefer to think of it as accept guidance or be guided. The Emperor's smile returned. But yes, Admiral Chen, that is the essence of it. The Imperium has maintained peace and order for 50,000 years. We did not achieve that by allowing chaos to flourish. Secretary General Okonkwo looked at the other human leaders. Sarah saw the same expression on every face, rage, humiliation, and helplessness. What could they do? The Sentinel Station's sensors had counted over 3,000 Valdros warships in orbit around Earth. Each one was larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. Your Majesty, Okonkwo said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor Sarah knew she must be feeling. Humanity accepts your generous offer of protection. The words tasted like ash in Sarah's mouth. She saw General Adeyemi's jaw clench. Dr. Martinez looked like he might be sick. Excellent. The Emperor clapped his hands together. You have made a wise choice. Tomorrow we will begin the integration process. Valdros advisors will be assigned to each of your worlds. We will establish resource collection schedules and educational programs. Do not worry, little humans. Under our guidance you will flourish. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. It is customary for protectorate species to show respect to the Imperium. When addressing Valdros officials, it is appropriate to bow. Like this. He demonstrated a deep bow, his body folding almost in half. The silence stretched. Sarah felt every eye in the room turned toward the human leaders. Secretary General Okonkwo's hand shook as she bowed. One by one, every human in the docking bay bowed to the Emperor. Sarah Chen bowed last. As she did, she made a promise to herself. This humiliation would not stand forever. Humanity had not climbed from caves to stars by accepting defeat. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed lesser species. The Valdros thought humanity was young and naive. They thought 2,000 years of submission was acceptable. They thought they could pat humanity on the head and expect gratitude. They were about to learn that Earth's children had teeth. As the Emperor and his delegation left the station, Sarah caught General Adeyemi's eye. He gave her the smallest nod. Dr. Martinez's expression had shifted from despair to cold calculation. Even Secretary General Okonkwo's shoulders were set with determination rather than defeat. The Valdros had won this day. They had humiliated humanity before they had even truly met them. They had reduced Earth's proudest achievements to children's playthings. But they had also made a critical mistake. They had assumed that because humanity was young, they would stay submissive. They had forgotten that young species still remembered how to fight for survival. They had forgotten that the most dangerous enemy is not the one who accepts defeat gracefully. Sarah Chen returned to the observation window and watched the Valdros fleet surrounding her world. 2,000 years, the Emperor had said. 2,000 years of bowing and submission. She smiled coldly at her reflection in the glass. We'll see about that. Behind her, Lieutenant Hayes approached nervously. Admiral? What do we do now? Sarah turned to face him. Around them, the other human leaders were gathering, their faces grim but determined. Now, Sarah said quietly. Now we bow, we smile. We accept their gifts and their guidance, her voice hardened. And we prepare. Because one day that Emperor is going to regret he ever humiliated Earth. The others nodded in agreement. The Valdros Imperium had just made humanity an offer they couldn't refuse, but they had also just made the worst enemy they could imagine. They had united every human under one purpose, prove them wrong. The age of submission had begun, but it would not last forever. Of that Sarah Chen was absolutely certain. 8 years had passed since the Emperor's arrival, and Admiral Sarah Chen sat in a small apartment on Mars Colony, instead of a military command center. The Valdros called it early retirement. She called it being put in a cage where she couldn't cause trouble. The view from her window showed the red Martian landscape, dotted with domes and structures that humanity had built with their own hands. But now, towering above them all was a massive Valdros administrative center, its silver spires making Earth's achievements look small and insignificant. A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts. Sarah checked the security camera, then disabled 3 different monitoring systems she knew the Valdros had installed. The device that did it was human-made, cobbled together from spare parts. The Valdros never imagined that the primitive humans would figure out their surveillance technology so quickly. Dr. Marcus Webb slipped inside, carrying a bag that supposedly contained groceries. Sarah had known Marcus for 15 years, ever since he had studied alien contact scenarios that everyone thought were fantasy. Now he was the leading expert on the Valdros, though his official job was teaching basic engineering to human students under Valdros supervision. Tell me something good. Marcus, Sarah said, pouring them both coffee. Real coffee was getting rare since the Valdros had decided Earth's coffee beans would be better used as a luxury export to other Imperium worlds. Marcus pulled out a data pad from his bag and set it on the table. I've been studying the Valdros for 8 years now. Every interaction, every piece of technology they've let us see, every history lesson they've taught us. He paused. Sarah, they're stagnant. What do you mean? The Valdros haven't innovated in 10,000 years. Maybe longer. Everything they use, from their ships to their weapons to their computers, is just refined versions of technology they invented ages ago. They're not creating anything new. They're just making old things slightly better. Sarah leaned forward. Are you sure? Completely. I've compared records from their historical databases. Their newest warship design is 8,000 years old. They've made it more efficient, yes, but the core design hasn't changed. Their AI systems? 42,000 years old. They're running the galaxy on ancient technology that they've just polished to perfection. But they're still stronger than us, Sarah said. Yes, because they have numbers and time. They've had thousands of years to build their fleets and perfect their systems. But Sarah, they're not better at innovation than us. They're worse. They've forgotten how to truly create because they haven't had to for thousands of years. Sarah felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. What about their military tactics? Marcus smiled. That's even better. Or worse, from their perspective. The Valdros fight the same way they've fought for 50,000 years. Overwhelming numbers, superior technology, formal fleet battles. They line up their ships and fire until the enemy surrenders. It works because they've always had the bigger, better fleet. They've never had to adapt, Sarah said slowly, understanding dawning. Exactly. They conquered most of their empire tens of thousands of years ago. Since then, they've only fought minor rebellions that they crushed with sheer force. They don't know guerrilla warfare. They don't understand asymmetric combat. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to fight fair. Before Sarah could respond, another knock came at the door. This time it was Captain James Morrison, still wearing his Earth Defense Force uniform even though the EDF technically no longer existed. The Valdros had disbanded Earth's military within the first year, claiming humanity didn't need weapons under the Imperium's protection. James looked exhausted. He had just returned from the Kryn War, a conflict on the far edge of the galaxy where the Valdros were fighting an enemy species called the Kryn Horde. How bad? Sarah asked, handing him coffee. James sat down heavily. 80,000 humans dead. 80,000, Sarah. We were labeled auxiliary expendables and sent in first every single battle. The Valdros waited behind us. Let us take the casualties, then swept in with their superior firepower to claim the victory. And Valdros casualties? Marcus asked quietly. 200. Total. For the entire war. James's hands shook with rage. They sent humans to die so they wouldn't risk their own people. We're not soldiers to them. We're shields. Expendable shields. Sarah felt cold fury settle in her chest. Tell me about the Kryn. They're tough. Stronger than humans physically. But their technology is about equal to ours. The Valdros beat them with numbers and better shields. But Sarah, the Kryn never surrendered. Even when they knew they would lose, they kept fighting. The Valdros had to kill almost every single Kryn soldier because they refused to give up. How did the Valdros react to that? Marcus asked. They were disturbed. I heard Valdros commanders saying the Kryn were unreasonably stubborn and illogically persistent. They couldn't understand why the Kryn didn't surrender when defeat was obvious. James smiled grimly, reminded me of humanity. Sarah stood and walked to her window. 8 years of humiliation. 8 years of bowing to Valdros administrators. 8 years of watching humanity's resources shipped off to other worlds while humans scraped by with less and less. But it wasn't just pride that hurt. Last year, the Valdros had decided that New Perth, a thriving human colony of 30,000 people, was in a location they wanted for a Valdros research station. They had given the colonists 3 days to evacuate, then demolished everything humans had built there. 30,000 people lost their homes so the Valdros could have slightly better real estate. When the New Perth colonists had protested, Valdros peacekeepers had arrested the leaders for disturbing Imperium harmony. Those leaders were still in prison somewhere. And now 80,000 human soldiers were dead. Thrown away like garbage. Marcus, how far has your network spread? Sarah asked. 40 human worlds? We have contacts on every major colony and most of the minor ones. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, politicians. People who are tired of bowing. James, how many of our people came back from the Kryn War angry? All of them. Every single survivor wants payback. They saw their friends die for nothing. They saw the Valdros laugh about acceptable losses while humans bled. Sarah turned to face them. Then it's time. Start reaching out to the network. Tell them to be ready. We're going to need weapons, ships, supplies, and most importantly, people who are willing to fight. Sarah, we can't beat them in a straight fight, Marcus warned. Their fleet is 100 times larger than anything we could build. Then we don't fight straight. We fight dirty. We fight smart. We fight the way humans have always fought when our backs are against the wall. Sarah's voice was hard as steel. The Valdros think we're children who need guidance. They're about to learn that Earth's children bite. Over the next months, messages spread across human space. Encrypted, hidden, and passed person to person, the word went out. Be ready, be patient. The time would come. But the time came sooner than expected, and from a direction no one anticipated. New Perth's relocated colonists had been moved to a mining world called New Australia. They obeyed Valdros rules. They worked hard. They caused no trouble, but they never forgot what had been taken from them. When the Valdros raised the resource tax from 40% to 55%, claiming the Imperium needed more supplies for another war, New Australia's population had enough. 10,000 people marched peacefully to the Valdros Administrative Center. They didn't carry weapons. They didn't make threats. They simply demanded to be heard. The Valdros administrator, a commander named Zelthor, looked at the crowd of humans from his balcony. He saw their signs, heard their chants, and felt something the Valdros rarely experienced: annoyance at having their authority questioned. This is an illegal gathering, Zelthor announced through speakers. Disperse immediately or face consequences. The crowd didn't disperse. They had lost their homes once. They had buried friends in the Kryn War. They had worked for 8 years under Valdros rule and watched their dignity stripped away piece by piece. They were done being pushed. We demand representation, someone shouted. We demand fair treatment, another voice called. The chant spread through the crowd. Fair treatment. Fair treatment. Fair treatment. Zelthor made a decision that would change everything. He called in Valdros peacekeepers and ordered them to disperse the crowd by force. The peacekeepers were soldiers, not riot police. They didn't have non-lethal weapons. They had plasma rifles designed to kill armored soldiers. When the crowd refused to move, the peacekeepers opened fire. 15,000 humans died in 30 minutes. Men, women, and children cut down by plasma fire. The Valdros killed them efficiently, methodically, and without hesitation. When Emperor Thexkar heard about the incident, he made a public statement that was broadcast across human space. "The events at New Australia were regrettable but necessary," he said, his four eyes showing no emotion. "Protectorate species must understand that Imperium law is absolute. Disobedience cannot be tolerated. These humans chose to ignore warnings and suffered the consequences of their choice. Let this be a lesson to all species under our protection. Order must be maintained." The message was clear: obey or die. But the Emperor had miscalculated. He thought fear would make humans obedient. He thought one brutal lesson would keep humanity in line for another 1,000 years. Instead, he had just shown every human in the galaxy exactly what Valdros protection meant. Sarah Chen watched the footage of New Australia's massacre in her apartment. Beside her, Marcus and James watched in silence. Around human space, billions of people watched the same footage and felt the same cold rage. "How many do we have?" Sarah asked quietly. James checked his datapad. At last count, 40,000 trained soldiers from the Kryn War. Another 100,000 with combat experience from Earth's old conflicts. 300,000 civilians with useful skills who volunteered. "But Sarah, we don't have ships. We don't have weapons that can match theirs." "Then we make them. We steal them. We improvise them." Sarah's voice was calm, but her eyes blazed with fury. "The Valdros think one massacre will teach us to obey. They're wrong. They just taught us that we have nothing left to lose." Marcus pulled up star charts showing human colonies. "If we do this, there's no going back. The Valdros will come for us with everything they have." "They're already killing us," James said flatly. "At least this way we die fighting." Sarah stood and looked at both of them. New Australia's people died begging for basic dignity. They died unarmed, asking only to be heard. "I will not let their deaths be meaningless." She activated her encrypted communication system. Across 40 human worlds, resistance leaders received the same message. Operation Prometheus is active. Strike everything. Strike everywhere. Make them bleed. The Valdros Imperium had ruled for 50,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and subjugated dozens of species. They had never, in all their history, faced a species that fought back after accepting protectorate status. They were about to learn that humanity was different. Humans didn't forget humiliation. They didn't forgive injustice. And they never ever stopped fighting. The war had begun. The attack came at midnight, coordinated across 12 human worlds simultaneously. The Valdros never saw it coming. On Mars, Captain James Morrison led a team of 200 former soldiers against the Valdros Administrative Center. They didn't have plasma rifles or energy shields. They had human weapons cobbled together from mining equipment and salvaged tech, explosives made from fertilizer, guns modified to fire armor-piercing rounds, drones equipped with cameras and crude missiles. "Remember," James said into his comm as his team moved through the darkness, "we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to hurt them." The Valdros peacekeepers guarding the center numbered 50 soldiers with advanced weapons and armor. By all military logic, they should have easily defeated the human attackers, but James didn't attack head-on. His teams hit from 6 different directions at once, using the dark Martian terrain for cover. They fired from buildings, from underground tunnels, from positions the Valdros sensors couldn't easily detect. When the Valdros concentrated fire on one position, that team retreated while another attacked from a different angle. The battle lasted 4 hours. When the sun rose, the Valdros Administrative Center was burning. 30 Valdros soldiers were dead. The remaining 20 had barricaded themselves inside, calling desperately for reinforcements. James's team had lost 80 people. But they had proven something crucial. Valdros soldiers could die. Across the galaxy, similar attacks succeeded and failed in equal measure. Some human teams managed to destroy Valdros installations and escape. Others were wiped out completely. But every single attack sent the same message. Humans were fighting back. The Valdros were shocked. In 50,000 years of Imperium history, no protectorate species had ever rebelled. Protectorate status was supposed to be peaceful. Subject species were supposed to be grateful for Valdros guidance. Commander Zelthor, The same Valdros who had ordered the New Australia massacre was stationed on Europa when the human attacks began. He immediately called for military reinforcements and sent a message to Emperor Thexkar. Your Majesty, the humans are in rebellion. They attack our installations with primitive weapons and terrorist tactics. Request authorization to implement pacification protocols. The Emperor's response came within hours. Authorization granted. Crush this rebellion immediately. Make an example of the humans. Zelthor smiled. Pacification protocols meant total war. It meant burning human cities until the survivors begged for mercy. It meant showing the entire galaxy what happened when you defied the Imperium. He deployed 3 full battle fleets to human space, 1,500 warships, each one capable of glassing a planet from orbit. It was, by Valdros standards, overwhelming force against an enemy with no space fleet. The first battle fleet arrived at Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Titan was home to 5 million humans and served as a major refueling station for ships traveling through the outer solar system. Admiral Sarah Chen was there waiting. All ships. This is Chen, remember the plan. We're not trying to win. We're trying to hurt them. The human defense fleet at Titan consisted of 43 ships. Most were converted cargo vessels and mining ships. Only 12 were actual military craft, left over from humanity's disbanded navy. Against 200 Valdros warships, it should have been a massacre lasting minutes. Sarah gave the order. All ships full burn. Ramming speed. The Valdros fleet commander, Admiral Crethor, watched the human ships accelerate toward his formation with confusion. Were they surrendering? Fleeing? Neither made sense given their trajectory. Then he understood, but too late. The human ships weren't trying to fight. They were missiles. Each one was loaded with volatile fuel and rigged to explode on impact. And each one had a crew of volunteers who knew they weren't coming home. Evasive action, Crethor ordered. But Valdros warships were built for power, not maneuverability. The first human ship slammed into a Valdros cruiser at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion was like a small star being born. It vaporized both ships instantly and damaged 3 others nearby. Then the second ship hit. And the third? And the fourth? 43 human ships died in suicide runs. They took 18 Valdros warships with them and damaged 30 more. In one battle, humanity had destroyed more Valdros military vessels than had been lost in the previous 1,000 years of Imperium warfare. Admiral Crethor stared at his damage reports in disbelief. His ships had been designed to fight other ships in formation, trading fire at long range. They had never been designed to fight an enemy that simply crashed into them like ancient battering rams. What kind of species does this? His second officer asked in shock. A desperate one, Crethor answered. But he was wrong. Humanity wasn't desperate. They were determined. There was a difference. The Valdros continued their assault, but they were now cautious. They knew humans would sacrifice themselves without hesitation. It made the Valdros, who had not faced existential war in thousands of years, uncomfortable. The next major battle happened at New Shanghai on Europa. The Valdros sent 20,000 peacekeepers to retake the city from human resistance forces. The humans had only 2,000 fighters. The Valdros commander, General Zelmar, had studied human military history during the voyage. He had read about human wars and their tactics. He thought he understood. He was wrong. New Shanghai was a city of tunnels and enclosed habitats beneath Europa's ice. The Valdros advanced in formation, using their superior armor and weapons to push through the outer defenses. They expected the humans to fall back, consolidate, and eventually surrender when their position became hopeless. Instead, the humans made every meter a nightmare. The tunnels were rigged with explosives that brought down entire sections on Valdros soldiers. Hidden firing positions let humans shoot and retreat before return fire could hit them. The lighting systems failed, plunging sections into darkness that favored humans with their better close combat skills. Chemical weapons made from industrial supplies filled corridors with choking gas. The Valdros had plasma rifles and energy shields, but they couldn't use heavy weapons without destroying the tunnels they needed to advance through. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not the crude bullets and explosives humans used. Their armor was advanced, but it didn't cover everything, and humans learned quickly where the weak points were. General Zelmar watched his casualty reports climb with growing horror. 100 dead, 300, 1,000, 5,000. "They're everywhere and nowhere," one of his officers reported. We clear a section and they attack from behind us. We pursue them, and they vanish into tunnels we didn't know existed. Sir, they know this terrain better than we do. Then bring down the entire city, Zelmar ordered. Collapse the tunnels. Seal them in. But doing so meant losing the infrastructure the Valdros had come to secure. It meant admitting that 20,000 Valdros soldiers couldn't defeat 2,000 humans in urban combat. The siege lasted 6 weeks. By the end, 12,000 Valdros soldiers were dead or wounded. They had managed to secure only 1/3 of New Shanghai, and that only because the human defenders chose to retreat rather than be trapped. When General Zelmar finally reported to Emperor Thexkar, he had to admit something no Valdros commander had said in 10,000 years. Your Majesty, we cannot achieve victory without unacceptable casualties. The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed. Unacceptable? General, you command the finest military in the galaxy. The humans have no fleet, no advanced weapons, no training in modern warfare. How are they defeating you? They're not fighting by our rules, Your Majesty. They use terrorism, suicide attacks, and guerrilla warfare. They hide among civilians. They booby-trap everything. They refuse to surrender even when defeat is certain. Our soldiers are trained for honorable combat between military forces. The humans fight like animals. Emperor Thexkar felt something he had rarely experienced in his long life. Concern. Not fear, not yet, but concern that perhaps humanity was more dangerous than he had anticipated. Redirect 3 more battle fleets to human space, he ordered. And General? Next time I do not want excuses. I want results. But even as the Emperor gave his orders, more attacks were happening across human worlds. The Valdros were learning that occupying human territory was like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The harder they squeezed, the more resistance slipped through their fingers. On Ganymede, a Valdros supply depot was destroyed by a team of engineers who had been pretending to repair Valdros equipment for years while actually learning how it worked. They knew exactly which systems to sabotage for maximum damage. On Ceres, human miners used their knowledge of the asteroid's tunnels to ambush Valdros patrols repeatedly. The Valdros would send 20 soldiers into the mines. 10 would come back. Then 5, then none. On Luna, Earth's moon, resistance fighters broadcast constant propaganda that the Valdros couldn't block. They showed footage of New Australia's massacre. They shared stories of human soldiers dying in the Kryn War while Valdros commanders watched safely from the rear. They reminded every human why they were fighting. Dr. Marcus Webb coordinated much of the intelligence gathering. He had spent 8 years studying Valdros systems, and now that knowledge was weaponized. He identified supply routes, communication relays, and weak points in Valdros defenses. They're predictable, Marcus told Sarah during a planning session. 50,000 years of the same tactics make them rigid. They can't adapt quickly. Every time we change our approach, it takes them weeks to respond. Sarah looked at the star map showing human space. Red markers showed where fighting was happening. There were dozens of them now, scattered across 12 worlds. We're hurting them, James said. But Sarah, we're losing people fast. At this rate, we'll run out of fighters before they run out of soldiers. Then we need to change the equation, Sarah replied. We need to make this cost them more than just soldiers. We need to make the Emperor himself feel the pain. How do we do that? Marcus asked. Sarah smiled coldly. By making him come to us. By making this personal. The Emperor humiliated us publicly. We need to return the favor. She activated the communication system and sent out a new message, not encrypted this time. She wanted the Valdros to see it. Emperor Thexkar, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth. 8 years ago you came to our world and called us children. You gave us a toy for babies and told us to study hard. You made us bow before you. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today I have a message for you. We are done bowing. We are done accepting your guidance. We are done being humiliated. You wanted to teach us a lesson at New Australia. Congratulations, we learned it. We learned that your protection means nothing. We learned that your peace is built on fear. We learned that you care nothing for the species you claim to guide. Sarah's voice hardened. So here is our counter lesson, Emperor. We are humans. We are young, yes. We are primitive by your standards. But we are not weak. We are not afraid. And we are not going to stop fighting until every Valdros soldier is off our worlds and every human is free. She ended the transmission and looked at her team. Now we prepare. Because the Emperor is going to come for us with everything he has. And when he does, we're going to show him exactly what Earth's children can do. Across human space, the message spread. The rebellion was no longer scattered attacks. It was a declared war, and the galaxy was watching. Emperor Thexakar watched Sarah Chen's message 3 times. With each viewing, his 4 eyes narrowed further, and his usually calm demeanor cracked just slightly. "This human dares to address me directly," he said to his advisors. "This primitive child thinks she can threaten the Valdros Imperium." "Your Majesty," one of his military commanders ventured carefully, "the human resistance has proven more difficult than anticipated. Perhaps we should consider negotiation." "Negotiation?" The Emperor's voice was ice. "I do not negotiate with children throwing tantrums. I discipline them." He stood from his throne, his robes flowing like liquid metal. "Redirect 60% of our fleet to human space. I want every human world under complete military control. Cut off their communications. Restrict their movement. Show them what happens when they forget their place." "Your Majesty, that will leave our borders with the Kryn weakly defended," another advisor warned. "The Kryn are defeated. The humans are the problem now. To it." What the Emperor didn't know was that the Kryn were not defeated. They were simply waiting. And when the Valdros pulled their fleets from the border to crush humanity, the Kryn saw their opportunity and attacked with renewed fury. Across human space, the war escalated. The Valdros threw overwhelming force at every human colony. They blockaded planets, bombed resistance strongholds, and arrested thousands of suspected fighters. But for every resistance cell they destroyed, 2 more appeared. For every human they killed, 10 more joined the fight. The Valdros were learning a lesson that conquerors throughout history had learned too late. Occupying a territory is far harder than conquering it. Sarah Chen stood in a hidden command center deep beneath the surface of Mars. Around her, screens showed the status of the war across human space. The picture was grim. "Mars has lost 40% of its surface infrastructure," James reported. "We've evacuated most civilians to the deep tunnels, but we can't hold the surface much longer." "Titan is under full blockade," Marcus added. "No ships in or out. The Valdros are starving them into submission." "Ganymede fell yesterday," another officer said quietly. "The Valdros executed everyone they identified as resistance fighters. 2,000 people." Sarah felt each loss like a physical wound, but she couldn't let it show. Her people needed to believe they could win. "What about the Pandora Protocol?" she asked Marcus. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. 90% complete. We've hidden weapons platforms in debris fields and asteroids, even inside abandoned satellites. The Valdros sensors are too focused on active threats to notice dormant systems. When we activate them, they'll have weapons pointed at them from 1,000 directions they never suspected. And the Moon Project? Finished last week. The Valdros still think Luna is just a civilian colony with no strategic value. They have no idea we've spent the last year hollowing out the northern crater and installing the largest railgun ever built. Sarah nodded. The Pandora Protocol was humanity's secret weapon for 2 years, using resources stolen from the Valdros and technology reverse-engineered from their equipment. Humans had been placing weapons throughout the solar system, not large obvious installations that the Valdros would detect and destroy, but small, hidden and networked platforms that could wake up all at once. "How long until we're ready?" Sarah asked. "We can activate any time." "But Sarah, even with all this, we can't beat their fleet. We can hurt them badly, maybe even cripple them, but they'll still have superior numbers." "I know. That's why we need to make the Emperor commit everything to one final battle. We need to make him so angry that he stops thinking strategically and starts thinking emotionally." James understood immediately. "You want to bait him, not just bait him. I want to humiliate him the way he humiliated us. I want to make this personal." Over the next 3 months, Sarah coordinated a series of attacks designed not just to hurt the Valdros, but to embarrass them. Human fighters would ambush Valdros patrols, then broadcast footage of the battles across the galaxy. They made the mighty Valdros Empire look weak, confused, and unable to control one primitive species. The most damaging attack came when a team of human hackers, led by a brilliant programmer named Yuki Tanaka, infiltrated the Valdros communication network. They didn't just steal information. They broadcast a message across the entire Imperium to every world and every species. The message showed the truth about New Australia. It showed Valdros soldiers gunning down unarmed civilians. It showed children dying. It showed the Emperor's response, calling the massacre necessary. Then it showed human resistance fighters destroying Valdros installations. It showed Valdros soldiers retreating. It showed the supposedly invincible Imperium struggling against a species they had called children. The message ended with Sarah Chen speaking directly to the camera. To all the species under Valdros protection, we are humans of Earth. For 8 years we bowed to the Imperium. We accepted their guidance. We believed their promises of peace. Then they murdered 15,000 of our people for peacefully protesting. Now we fight, not because we are violent, but because we have no other choice. If the Valdros can do this to us, they can do it to you. The Emperor is not your protector. He is your jailer. The message couldn't be blocked or deleted. Yuki had embedded it in the Valdros network itself, set to replicate and rebroadcast automatically. Within days, every species in the Imperium had seen it. The effect was immediate. Small protests began on several protectorate worlds. Nothing major, nothing that threatened the Imperium directly, but whispers of discontent spread. Questions were asked. The myth of Valdros' invincibility was cracking. Emperor Thexkar was furious beyond reason. He had ruled for 300 years and never once had his authority been challenged like this. These humans, these primitive children, were making him look foolish before the entire galaxy. I want Sarah Chen dead, he told his military council. I want Earth burning. I want humanity to remember for the next 10,000 years what happens when you defy me. Your Majesty, one advisor said carefully. The humans seem to be concentrating their forces around Earth. Intelligence suggests they're planning a final stand there. It could be a trap. Of course it's a trap, the Emperor snapped. And we will spring it with such overwhelming force that it won't matter. How many ships can we deploy to Sol system? If we pull from all sectors, approximately 6,000 warships, Your Majesty. But that would leave many systems undefended. Do it. I will personally oversee humanity's destruction. I will stand on Earth's surface and watch it burn. The advisor hesitated. Your Majesty, is it wise for you to personally enter a combat zone? The Emperor's eyes blazed. I have ruled for 3 centuries. I have conquered 40 worlds personally. I will not hide from primitive humans who think they can challenge me. Prepare my flagship. We leave in 3 days. What the Emperor didn't know was that several of his advisors were already having doubts. The war with humanity was costing the Imperium dearly, not just in ships and soldiers, but in reputation. The Valdros had always ruled through perceived invincibility. But humans had proven they could be hurt. Worse, the Kryn had renewed their attacks, sensing weakness, and now other species were watching, wondering if they too could resist. On Mars, Sarah received word that the Emperor himself was coming. Marcus stood beside her, looking at the intelligence reports. He's bringing everything, Marcus said. 6,000 ships. 60% of the entire Valdros fleet. If we fail, Sarah, there's no second chance. They'll glass Earth and every human colony. If we don't try, we're already dead, Sarah replied. The Valdros will never stop hunting us now. Better to die fighting than live on our knees. James entered the command center. He had been coordinating the civilian evacuations from Earth. Billions of people had been moved to deep underground shelters or evacuated to the outer colonies. Mars is as ready as it's going to be, he reported. The civilian population has been moved to the deep shelters. We have 40,000 fighters ready to defend the underground sections. Surface defense is down to skeleton crews who know they're not coming back. Sarah nodded. Mars would fall. They all knew that. But Mars would make the Valdros pay for every meter. What about Earth? She asked. 3 billion people evacuated to underground facilities. Another 2 billion refused to leave. They want to see the battle, they say. They want to watch us fight. James smiled sadly. Stubborn species, aren't we? It's kept us alive this long, Sarah said. She looked at the star map one last time. The Valdros fleet was 3 days away. 3 days until the largest battle in human history. 3 days until they would either win their freedom or die trying. Send the activation codes to all Pandora platforms, Sarah ordered. Make sure every weapon system is ready. When the Valdros arrive, I want them to walk into a nightmare. Marcus pulled up the final calculations. The railgun on Luna is charged and ready. It has enough power for 1 shot. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. After that, it's done. 1 shot is all we need, Sarah said. Target the Emperor's flagship. If we can kill Thexkar, we cut the head off the snake. And if we miss? James asked. Then we fight until there's nothing left to fight with, Sarah answered. But we don't bow. Not ever again. Across human space, the word spread. The Valdros were coming in force. The Emperor himself would lead them. Earth would be the final battlefield. Some humans despaired. Some prayed. Some simply prepared to fight. In the deep tunnels of Mars, in the underground cities of Earth, in the hidden bases on dozens of moons and asteroids, humans made ready for war. They checked their weapons, said goodbye to loved ones, and steeled themselves for what was coming. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. By every logical calculation, they should surrender. But humanity had never been good at logic when it came to survival. They had climbed from caves to stars by being too stubborn to quit. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that should have destroyed them. The Valdros thought they were crushing a rebellion. They thought they were teaching primitive children a lesson about knowing their place. They were wrong. They weren't fighting a rebellion. They were fighting a species that had learned one crucial truth: better to die free than live in chains. The Emperor was coming to watch Earth burn. Instead, he was about to learn why young species were the most dangerous. They still remembered what it meant to fight for survival, and they had nothing left to lose. The Valdros fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a metal storm. 6,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of technology perfected over 50,000 years. At the center of the formation, larger than any other vessel, was the Emperor's flagship, the Eternal Judgment. Its hull was made of gleaming white metal, and it bristled with enough weapons to destroy a planet. Emperor Thexkar stood on his command deck, his 4 eyes surveying the primitive solar system before him. 8 small planets, a yellow sun, and somewhere among them, the species that had dared to challenge him. "Your Majesty, we are detecting the human defense fleet," his tactical officer reported. "Approximately 400 vessels, mostly converted civilian ships. They're forming a defensive line between us and Earth." The Emperor laughed. 400 ships against 6,000. Do they truly think they can stop us? Perhaps they hope to buy time for their population to evacuate, Your Majesty. There will be no evacuation. Order all ships to advance, destroy the human fleet, then proceed to Earth. I want to watch their planet burn from orbit. The Valdros fleet moved forward in perfect formation, exactly as they had done for thousands of years. It was the same formation that had won countless battles. It had never failed. That was its weakness. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the Valdros fleet advance from her command center deep beneath Mars. Every screen showed different angles, different sensors, different views of the same terrifying sight. The largest military force ever assembled, coming to destroy humanity. "They're moving just like Marcus predicted," she said calmly. "Tight formation, advancing in a straight line. They're not even scanning for hidden threats. Why would they?" James replied. "They've never had to worry about ambushes. They've always had the superior force." Sarah smiled coldly. "Activate Pandora Protocol. All platforms, all weapons. Light them up." Across the solar system, 3,000 hidden weapons platforms came to life. They had been disguised as debris, as dead satellites, as asteroids. Now they revealed their true nature. Railguns fired from hidden positions in the asteroid belt. Missiles launched from fake cargo containers floating in space. Laser batteries that had pretended to be mining equipment locked onto Valdros ships and opened fire. The Valdros fleet suddenly found itself being attacked from every direction at once. Their sensors, focused on the obvious human fleet ahead of them, hadn't detected the hidden platforms. Their shields, oriented forward, were vulnerable from the sides and rear. 200 Valdros ships died in the first 90 seconds. Explosions blossomed throughout their formation like deadly flowers. "Evasive action," Emperor Thexkar roared. "Find those weapons platforms and destroy them." But the platforms were small, mobile, and networked. When the Valdros targeted one, it would go dark while others opened fire. It was like fighting shadows. The human defense fleet, seeing the chaos, charged forward. They didn't try to match the Valdros in firepower. Instead, they used the confusion to get close where the larger Valdros ships couldn't maneuver effectively. "All ships follow attack pattern Delta," Sarah ordered. "Hit and run. Don't try to win. Just make them hurt." The human ships dove into the Valdros formation like sharks attacking a whale. They fired, then immediately changed direction before return fire could hit them. They used debris for cover. They coordinated in small groups, overwhelming individual Valdros ships before moving to the next target. It was chaos. It was messy. It was nothing like the organized warfare the Valdros practiced, And it was working. Status report, the Emperor demanded. We've lost 400 ships, Your Majesty. Enemy casualties are approximately 100 vessels. But these weapons platforms, we can't pin them down. They're everywhere, 400 ships. In less than an hour, the humans had destroyed 400 Valdros warships. The Valdros hadn't lost that many ships in the past 1,000 years of warfare. Continue advancing, the Emperor ordered. Launch fighters. Clear out those platforms. And ready the main weapons. When we reach Earth, I want it reduced to rubble. The Valdros fleet pushed forward, taking casualties with every kilometer. Their fighters launched, seeking out the hidden platforms. They found some, destroyed them. But there were so many, scattered across such a vast area. Then Luna, Earth's moon, opened fire. The entire northern face of Luna had been converted into a single massive railgun, using stolen Valdros technology and human engineering. It had taken a year to build and had enough power for perhaps 2 shots. The first shot was perfect. A projectile the size of a small building, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance between Luna and the Valdros fleet in seconds. It hit a Valdros dreadnought and simply erased it from existence. The explosion was so massive it damaged 20 ships nearby. What was that? The Emperor shouted. The moon, Your Majesty. The moon is armed. Emperor Thexkar stared at the view screen in disbelief. The humans had turned their moon into a weapon. Their moon. The audacity was beyond anything he had imagined. Target that moon and destroy it, he ordered. Your Majesty, we're detecting another power surge. The second shot from Luna's railgun took longer to charge, but it was just as devastating. This time, the target was the Eternal Judgment itself. The shot hit the flagship's shields at full power. The shields held barely, but the entire ship shook like a toy in a child's hands. Systems failed throughout the vessel. The Emperor himself was thrown from his command throne. Damage report, he demanded, pulling himself up. Shields down to 30%, Your Majesty. That weapon has more power than anything we've encountered. If they fire again, then ensure we destroy it before they can. All ships focus fire on Earth's moon. I want it cracked open. 2,000 Valdros ships turned their weapons toward Luna. The moon lit up like a small sun as plasma fire and energy beams hammered its surface. Within minutes, the northern crater where the railgun was hidden collapsed. The weapon that had taken a year to build was destroyed, but it had done its job. It had forced the Valdros to waste time and ammunition on a static target. And every second they wasted was another second for humans to hurt them. The battle raged for 6 hours. Slowly, inevitably, the Valdros pushed through toward Earth. Their numbers were simply too great. The human defense fleet was down to less than 50 ships. The hidden weapons platforms were running out of ammunition or being destroyed, but the Valdros had paid a price. Nearly half their fleet was damaged or destroyed. Ships that had never seen real combat in thousands of years were burning wrecks drifting through space. Emperor Thexkar watched Earth grow larger on his view screen. The blue planet looked peaceful, innocent. He felt no mercy. Prepare orbital bombardment, he ordered. I want, Your Majesty. We're detecting massive power signatures from Mars. The humans have weapons installations there too. The Emperor's patience snapped. Enough. Send boarding parties to Mars. I want every human stronghold there eliminated. And launch the planetary assault on Earth. Reduce their major cities to ash. But there was one thing the Emperor hadn't planned for. One element that he had overlooked in his rage. Captain James Morrison and 200 human Special Forces soldiers had been waiting in a damaged freighter, floating dead in space among the debris of destroyed ships. When the Eternal Judgment passed close hunting for more hidden platforms, James gave the order. Go, go, go. The freighter, which the Valdros sensors had dismissed as wreckage, suddenly fired maneuvering thrusters. It closed the distance to the flagship and magnetically clamped onto its hull. We're attached, James reported. Breaching now. They cut through the hull using plasma torches stolen from Valdros equipment. It took 30 minutes of tense work while the battle raged around them. Every second, James expected Valdros security to find them. But the flagship was so massive and the battle so chaotic that 200 humans in one small section went unnoticed. They breached into a maintenance corridor. Alarms immediately blared. They know we're here, James said. Fast and violent people. We're here for one target. They fought through the flagship like a surgical strike. The Valdros crew fought back, but they were administrators, technicians, and guards used to ceremonial duty. James's team were veterans of the Kryn War, survivors of 8 years of guerrilla fighting, and they were motivated by every human who had died under Valdros rule. The throne room was heavily guarded. 20 elite Valdros soldiers in advanced armor blocked the entrance. Grenades, James ordered. They didn't have Valdros energy grenades. They had human-made explosives packed with ball bearings. Primitive, yes, but devastating in the enclosed corridor. The Valdros guards fell, their armor pierced by hundreds of metal fragments. James kicked open the throne room doors. Emperor Thexkar stood from his throne, his 4 eyes wide with surprise. He had ruled for 3 centuries. He had conquered worlds. He had never expected humans to reach him here, in the heart of his flagship. "You dare," he said, his voice filled with outrage. "You dare to enter my presence as an equal." "I dare," James replied, raising his weapon. But the Emperor moved faster than expected. He was old, but he came from a warrior species that had conquered the galaxy. His hand reached for a ceremonial blade at his waist. "You wish to challenge me?" Thexkar asked. "Then let us follow the old ways. Single combat, you and me, human. If you win, I will order my fleet to withdraw. If I win, your species dies." James knew it was a trap. Knew the Emperor was probably a skilled fighter. Knew he might die, but he also knew this was being recorded. Knew every Valdros in the fleet was watching. Knew the galaxy was watching. "Accepted," James said, and put down his gun. The fight lasted 3 minutes. The Emperor was strong, fast, and trained in combat styles older than human civilization. But he had lived in a palace for 300 years. He had fought in ceremonies and rituals, not life-or-death struggles. James Morrison had learned to fight in the slums of Detroit, refined his skills in military special forces, and spent 8 years in actual combat. He knew every dirty trick, every weakness, every way to turn an opponent's strength against them. When the Emperor lunged with his blade, James caught the wrist, twisted, and broke it. When the Emperor tried to use his superior size, James went low, attacking joints and weak points. When the Emperor tried to wrestle, James used leverage and speed. The Emperor fell to his knees, his blade clattering across the floor. James stood over him, breathing hard, and picked up the blade. "You lose," James said. For the first time in his long life, Emperor Thexkar felt real fear. He waited for the killing blow. It didn't come. Instead, James activated his comm, broadcasting to the entire Valdros fleet. He made sure every camera in the throne room was capturing this. "I am Captain James Morrison of Earth. I have defeated your Emperor in single combat by your own traditions." He offered terms. "If I won, the fleet withdraws. If he won, humanity dies. I won." He looked down at the Emperor, who knelt before him, defeated and humiliated. "You came to our world 8 years ago and made us bow. You called us children. You gave us toys and told us to learn our place. You murdered 15,000 of our people for daring to ask for dignity. You threw 80,000 human soldiers into a war as expendable shields. You tried to break us." James's voice was hard as iron. "You failed. We are humans. We don't break. We adapt. We endure. We fight." He raised the Emperor's blade and pressed it against Thexkar's throat. The Emperor closed all 4 eyes, waiting for death. James lowered the blade. "I don't kill defeated enemies who can't fight back. That's the difference between us. Take your fleet and leave. If you ever come to human space again, we won't show mercy a second time." The Emperor stared at him in shock. In Valdros culture, defeated enemies were supposed to be killed or enslaved. Mercy was weakness, but mercy wasn't weakness. It was strength. It was the strength to choose, even in victory. The Valdros fleet withdrew. Not all at once, but in groups, the ships turning away from Earth and retreating. Their Emperor had been defeated, humiliated, beaten by a primitive human. The invincible Valdros had lost. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. The Valdros Imperium. 50,000 years old, beaten by a species barely 8 years into space. Other species rose in rebellion. The Kryn horde pushed deeper into Valdros territory. Subject worlds demanded independence. The Imperium fractured as species after species broke away. Inspired by humanity's resistance, Emperor Thexkar was exiled. The Valdros Council of Elders, embarrassed by his failure, stripped him of his title and sent him to a remote agricultural world. He spent his remaining years working in fields under the supervision of human colonists, a fitting humiliation for one who had humiliated others. Earth was scarred. Mars was damaged. Luna was cracked and burning. Millions of humans had died, but they had won. They had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall if it forgot that young species still remembered how to survive. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the surface of Earth 6 months after the battle. The sky was still streaked with smoke from burning cities, but reconstruction had begun. Around her, representatives from 40 species gathered for the first meeting of what would become the Galactic Council of Free Peoples. "We didn't fight to build an empire," Sarah said to the assembled delegates. "We fought so no one could force us to bow ever again. Today we make that promise to every species here. No more empires. No more emperors. No more telling others they're not good enough to stand as equals." The council was formed that day. Not perfect, not without problems, but free. Species that had been subjects became partners. Dr. Marcus Webb visited the exiled emperor 1 year after the war. He found Thexkar working in a grain field, his once regal robes replaced with simple farming clothes. "Why?" the former emperor asked. "How did primitives defeat us?" Marcus sat on a fence rail and watched the sunset. "You ruled for 50,000 years. You had peace, prosperity, and power. You forgot what desperation feels like. You forgot what it means to fight for survival." He looked at Thexkar directly. "We spent 300,000 years learning to survive against impossible odds. Ice ages that should have killed us. Predators stronger than us. Diseases that wiped out whole populations. We learned to adapt, to cooperate, to refuse to quit even when logic said we should." Marcus stood to leave. "You thought we were children. You were right. But you forgot that young species are still hungry, still desperate. Still remember what it takes to survive. You had everything to lose. We had nothing left but our freedom. That made us dangerous." The former emperor watched Marcus walk away, finally understanding. The Valdros had been mighty, but they had been comfortable. Humanity had been weak, but they had been determined. In the end, determination had won. Earth rebuilt. The scars of war slowly faded. Children born after the war grew up in a galaxy where humans stood as equals, not subjects. They heard stories of the Great War, of Admiral Chen and Captain Morrison, of the Battle of Earth and the Emperor's fall. And they learned the lesson that the Valdros had forgotten. Never underestimate those who have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Emperor had come to Earth expecting to watch it burn. Instead, he watched his empire crumble, because humanity had refused to bow. Instead, James activated his comm, broadcasting to the entire Valdros fleet. He made sure every camera in the throne room was capturing this. "I am Captain James Morrison of Earth. I have defeated your Emperor in single combat by your own traditions." He offered terms. "If I won, the fleet withdraws. If he won, humanity dies. I won." He looked down at the Emperor, who knelt before him, defeated and humiliated. "You came to our world 8 years ago and made us bow. You called us children. You gave us toys and told us to learn our place. You murdered 15,000 of our people for daring to ask for dignity. You threw 80,000 human soldiers into a war as expendable shields. You tried to break us." James's voice was hard as iron. "You failed. We are humans. We don't break. We adapt, we endure. We fight!" He raised the Emperor's blade and pressed it against Thexkar's throat. The Emperor closed all 4 eyes, waiting for death. James lowered the blade. "I don't kill defeated enemies who can't fight back. That's the difference between us. Take your fleet and leave. If you ever come to human space again, we won't show mercy a second time." The Emperor stared at him in shock. In Valdros culture, defeated enemies were supposed to be killed or enslaved. Mercy was weakness, but mercy wasn't weakness. It was strength. It was the strength to choose, even in victory. The Valdros fleet withdrew. Not all at once, but in groups, the ships turning away from Earth and retreating. Their Emperor had been defeated, humiliated, beaten by a primitive human. The invincible Valdros had lost. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. The Valdros Imperium. 50,000 years old, beaten by a species barely 8 years into space. Other species rose in rebellion. The Kryn horde pushed deeper into Valdros territory. Subject worlds demanded independence. The Imperium fractured as species after species broke away. Inspired by humanity's resistance, Emperor Thexkar was exiled. The Valdros Council of Elders, embarrassed by his failure, stripped him of his title and sent him to a remote agricultural world. He spent his remaining years working in fields under the supervision of human colonists, a fitting humiliation for one who had humiliated others. Earth was scarred. Mars was damaged. Luna was cracked and burning. Millions of humans had died, but they had won. They had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall if it forgot that young species still remembered how to survive. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the surface of Earth 6 months after the battle. The sky was still streaked with smoke from burning cities, but reconstruction had begun. Around her, representatives from 40 species gathered for the first meeting of what would become the Galactic Council of Free Peoples. "We didn't fight to build an empire," Sarah said to the assembled delegates. "We fought so no one could force us to bow ever again. Today we make that promise to every species here. No more empires. No more emperors. No more telling others they're not good enough to stand as equals." The council was formed that day. Not perfect, not without problems, but free. Species that had been subjects became partners. Dr. Marcus Webb visited the exiled emperor 1 year after the war. He found Thexkar working in a grain field, his once regal robes replaced with simple farming clothes. "Why?" the former emperor asked. "How did primitives defeat us?" Marcus sat on a fence rail and watched the sunset. "You ruled for 50,000 years. You had peace, prosperity, and power. You forgot what desperation feels like. You forgot what it means to fight for survival." He looked at Thexkar directly. "We spent 300,000 years learning to survive against impossible odds. Ice ages that should have killed us. Predators stronger than us. Diseases that wiped out whole populations. We learned to adapt, to cooperate, to refuse to quit even when logic said we should." Marcus stood to leave. "You thought we were children. You were right. But you forgot that young species are still hungry, still desperate. Still remember what it takes to survive. You had everything to lose. We had nothing left but our freedom. That made us dangerous." The former emperor watched Marcus walk away, finally understanding. The Valdros had been mighty, but they had been comfortable. Humanity had been weak, but they had been determined. In the end, determination had won. Earth rebuilt. The scars of war slowly faded. Children born after the war grew up in a galaxy where humans stood as equals, not subjects. They heard stories of the Great War, of Admiral Chen and Captain Morrison, of the Battle of Earth and the Emperor's fall. And they learned the lesson that the Valdros had forgotten. Never underestimate those who have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Emperor had come to Earth expecting to watch it burn. Instead, he watched his empire crumble, because humanity had refused to bow. Jack Wilson wiped sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last bolt on the coolant pipe. The engine room of the UES Horizon hummed around him, its steady vibration a comfort after 3 years in deep space. As the ship's lead maintenance engineer, Jack knew every pipe, wire, and panel like he knew his own hands. "Engine efficiency at 97%, Lieutenant Wilson," said the ship's computer. "Optimal levels achieved." Jack smiled and put his wrench back in his tool belt. "Thanks, computer. Tell Captain Miller I fixed the coolant leak." He stood up and stretched his back. At 34, Jack wasn't old, but crawling through maintenance tunnels for hours made his muscles ache. He looked out the small viewport at the stars beyond. The Delta Quadrant was beautiful, full of stars no human had seen up close before. The Horizon's 5-year mission to explore this region had already discovered 17 new planets that might support human life. Jack was about to head to the mess hall for a late dinner when the alarm blared. "Alert! Unknown vessel approaching. All crew to battle stations." The light switched to red. Jack ran to his emergency station at the auxiliary control panel. The Horizon wasn't a warship, but its shields were strong enough to handle most space dangers. The ship suddenly rocked violently, throwing Jack against the wall. Pain shot through his shoulder. "Hull breach on Deck 3, the computer announced. "Shields at 60%. Another hit rocked the ship harder. Equipment crashed to the floor around Jack. Whatever was attacking them had weapons far stronger than the Horizon shields were designed to handle. Captain Miller's voice came over the speakers. "All crew to evacuation pods. This is not a drill. We are under attack by an unknown alien vessel. Abandoned ship." Jack started toward the door, then stopped. The main reactor was only 1 deck below. If it was damaged, the ship would explode before everyone could escape. He turned back to his control panel. "Computer, show me reactor status." The screen lit up red. The reactor cooling system was failing. Without it, they had maybe 10 minutes before explosion. Jack made his decision in a second. "Computer, route all emergency power to evacuation pod launches. I'm going to stabilize the reactor manually. Warning, Manual reactor stabilization requires presence in reactor room until completion. Estimated time to stabilization, 8 minutes. Time to recommended ship evacuation, 7 minutes. I know, Jack said, already running toward the emergency ladder that led down to the reactor level. Just make sure everyone else gets out. The ship took another hit as Jack climbed down. He could hear the evacuation pods launching. Good. The crew was getting away. The reactor room was chaos. Sparks flew from damaged panels. Steam hissed from broken pipes. The reactor core glowed bright blue at the center, pulsing dangerously. Jack ran to the main control panel. The cooling system was failing fast. He couldn't fix it completely, but he might be able to slow the reaction enough to give the evacuation pods more time to reach safe distance. His hands flew over the controls. Reroute power here, bypass damaged systems there. The ship shook again. Another hit. Computer, status of evacuation? Evacuation 65% complete. 4 minutes until minimum safe distance reached. Jack worked faster. Sweat poured down his face. The heat in the reactor room was rising. The air felt thin. Life support was failing. Evacuation 80% complete, the computer said. Warning. Unknown entities detected boarding on Deck 2. Jack froze for a second. Boarding? The attackers weren't just trying to destroy them, they were coming aboard. No time to worry about that. Jack connected 2 emergency power cables directly to the cooling system. The reactor's dangerous pulsing slowed slightly. Evacuation 95% complete, the computer reported. 3 minutes until minimum safe distance reached. Jack allowed himself a smile. He was going to die, but the crew would live. That was what mattered. The reactor room door slid open. Jack turned, expecting to see fellow crew members who hadn't made it to the pods. Instead, 4 tall figures stood in the doorway. They weren't human. Each was nearly 7 feet tall with gray-blue skin that seemed to shimmer like metal in the emergency lights. They had 4 arms and wore black armor that covered most of their bodies. Their faces were flat with no nose, just breathing slits, and their eyes were like purple crystals. Jack backed up against the reactor controls. Computer, who are they? Unknown species. No match in database. The aliens moved into the room with smooth, coordinated steps. 2 held weapons, long, curved objects that hummed with energy. The others appeared to be scanning the room with devices attached to their lower arms. Stay back, Jack shouted, grabbing a heavy wrench from his tool belt. It was a useless gesture. If they wanted to kill him, they could do it easily. The alien in front made a series of clicking sounds to the others. One responded with similar clicks. They seemed to be discussing something. The leader pointed at Jack, then at the reactor controls. It seemed to understand what Jack was doing. Another violent shake rocked the ship. The lights flickered. The reactor pulsed faster again. Warning. Reactor critical. 2 minutes to core breach. Jack turned back to the controls. If he was going to die, he'd die trying to save his crewmates. To his surprise, one of the aliens moved forward and began working on another control panel. Its 4 hands moved with incredible speed. It wasn't trying to stop Jack, it seemed to be helping stabilize the reactor. Evacuation 100% complete, the computer announced. All survival pods launched. Jack felt a moment of pure relief. His friends had made it out. Now he just needed to buy them more time to get away. The alien working on the controls made a sound like a bell ringing. The leader responded, then turned to Jack. It raised one of its devices and pointed it at him. I don't care what you do to me, Jack said, standing tall. My crew is safe. A blue light shot from the device. Pain exploded through Jack's body. His muscles locked up. The world spun around him as he fell to the floor. Before darkness took him, Jack saw the aliens continuing to work on the reactor. They weren't trying to speed up the explosion, they were stopping it. Why would they save a ship they had just attacked? Jack woke up in darkness. His head pounded. His mouth was dry. He was lying on a hard surface that vibrated slightly beneath him. Slowly, his eyes adjusted. He was in a small room. No, a cell. Metal walls. No windows except for a small circle in what must be the door. The air smelled strange, like ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. Jack sat up carefully. His uniform was torn and dirty, but he didn't seem to be badly hurt. Just bruises and small cuts. His tool belt was gone. He stood and walked to the small window. Through it, he could see a corridor made of the same dark metal as his cell. The design was nothing like human ships. Strange symbols glowed on the walls. Jack stepped back and tried to think. The aliens had attacked the horizon. They had boarded just before it would have exploded. Then they, saved it? No, that couldn't be right. He remembered the shaking, the damage. The horizon couldn't have survived. So he was on their ship. But why take him prisoner? Why not just kill him? Jack went back to the window and pressed his face against it to see as much as possible. At the end of the corridor, there was a larger window, a viewport into space. What he saw made his blood freeze. In the distance, a human colony was burning. He recognized it immediately. New Terra, one of humanity's largest settlements outside the solar system. Bright flashes lit up its night side. Attack ships, the same design that had attacked the horizon, swarmed around it like angry insects. Jack slumped against the wall. Now he understood. The aliens hadn't just happened to find the horizon. This was a coordinated attack on all of humanity's presence in this sector of space. And he was the only human who knew it was happening. A sound at the door made Jack stand quickly. It slid open, revealing two of the four-armed aliens. One held a weapon pointed at Jack. The other carried what looked like a tray. The unarmed alien set the tray on the floor and backed out. The door slid closed again. On the tray was a container of clear liquid, water, and something that might be food, a purple-gray paste. Jack didn't touch it. Instead, he sat on the hard shelf that served as a bed and stared at the door. He wasn't supposed to have survived the attack on the horizon. He was supposed to have died with his ship. But now, as the only witness to the beginning of what looked like a war, Jack realized he might be humanity's only hope. He just had to figure out how to escape from an alien warship and warn Earth before it was too late. Jack spent 3 days in his cell, marking time by the meals the aliens brought him. He tried to talk to them each time the door opened, but they never responded. They just set down the food and left. The strange purple paste tasted like salted oatmeal. The clear liquid was water with a hint of something sweet. Jack ate and drank carefully at first, worried about poison, but soon realized he had no choice. He needed to stay alive. On the 4th day, something changed. When the door opened, a single alien stood there. This one was taller than the others, with dark red markings on its armor. 4 bright metal bands wrapped around its upper arms. "Human," it said in a deep, grinding voice. Jack jumped to his feet in surprise. "You speak English?" The alien made a sound like stones rubbing together. A laugh, maybe. "We learn your languages quickly. Simple patterns." It stepped aside and motioned with one of its 4 arms. "Come. Commander wants to see you." Jack hesitated but then walked through the door. 2 guards waited in the hallway, both holding the curved energy weapons he'd seen before. "What's your name?" Jack asked the red-marked alien as they walked. "Krell," it said. "I am 2nd battle leader of this ship. I'm Lieutenant Jack Wilson. Engineering Division, UES Horizon." "We know," Krell said. "Your ship's data was easy to take." They walked through corridors that curved in strange ways. Jack tried to memorize their path, but it was too confusing. Everything on the alien ship was built at slightly different angles than what humans would use. The walls were covered with the same glowing symbols he'd seen from his cell. Now that he was closer, Jack noticed they changed constantly, pulsing with different colors. "Those are information displays?" Jack asked, pointing. Krell looked at him with its purple crystal eyes. "Yes. You understand technology well?" "I'm an engineer," Jack said. "I fix things." "Interesting. You stayed on your dying ship to fix it while others escaped." Jack was surprised they knew that. Yes, to give my crew time to get away. Krell made a sound like metal bending. That is why Commander Drax wants to see you. Such behavior is respected among Vex. So that's what they called themselves. Vex. They reached a large door that slid open at their approach. Inside was a circular room with a raised platform in the center. On the platform stood the largest Vex Jack had seen yet. It wore black armor, with gold designs, and had 6 arms instead of 4. Commander Drax, Krell said, lowering its head, the human engineer. Drax turned slowly. Its crystal eyes were deep blue instead of purple. Human, Drax said, its voice even deeper than Krell's. You are far from your territory. Jack stood straight, trying to look confident. We were on a peaceful mission of exploration. You attacked us without warning. You entered Vex space, Drax said simply, as if that explained everything. But you interest me. Your ship's records show you volunteered to die so others could live. That's what we do, Jack said. We protect each other. Vex do this also, Drax said. For the good of all Vex. Jack pointed toward the viewport where he could still see flashes around the distant colony. Is attacking peaceful settlements for the good of all Vex? Drax made the stone-grinding laugh sound. Peaceful? Your kind spread like disease across stars. Taking, building, changing, we watched for 20 of your years. Each new human settlement pushes closer to Vex space. Now you cross our borders. We didn't know, Jack said. We've never even heard of the Vex before. Ignorance is not excuse, Drax said, but ignorance can be fixed. That is why you live. The commander moved closer to Jack. You will teach us about humans, how you think, how you fight. Then we will decide if your kind can exist near Vex space. Jack felt cold fear in his stomach. They wanted him to help them understand humanity's weaknesses. And if I refuse? Drax's crystal eyes flashed. Then you have no value. But I think you are too smart to refuse. Jack needed time to think, to plan, to find a way to warn Earth. Playing along might be his only chance. What do you want to know? He asked. Drax seemed pleased. Good. First, you will see our ship. Understand Vex power. Then you will know why resistance is pointless. Over the next few days, Krell showed Jack parts of the massive Vex warship. Always under guard, always with limited access. But Jack saw enough to understand they were in serious trouble. The Vex ship was huge, nearly a mile long, with weapons that could destroy small moons. Its engines used some kind of advanced fusion technology that Jack had never seen before. But most importantly, Jack learned the Vex had 20 more ships, just like this one, all heading toward human space. He tried to learn more during each tour, asking careful questions that wouldn't raise suspicion. How do you cool your power core? He asked Krell one day as they walked past a humming wall of machinery. Liquid metal channels heat to outer hull, Krell explained. Very efficient. Jack nodded, storing the information away. Our systems use water under pressure. Not as good, but simpler. Krell seemed interested in these exchanges. Jack realized the second battle leader was studying him as much as he was studying the ship. On the 7th day, Krell took Jack to a new area, engineering. Here, Vex with special green markings on their armor worked on complex machines. Jack tried not to show too much interest, but his engineer's mind was racing, taking in everything. The main power distribution panel was similar to human designs, just more advanced. The coolant system ran through the center of the ship, with emergency bypass valves at regular intervals. Most importantly, Jack noticed the reactor was directly connected to the weapon systems, no safety buffers, no isolation circuits. A design flaw, or just a different approach? As they walked back to his cell, Jack passed a room where several Vex were gathered around what looked like a human woman. She was unconscious on a table with machines scanning her body. Who's that? Jack asked, stopping suddenly. Krell pulled him along. New specimen. Captured from small outpost. Is she alive? For now, if useful, stays alive. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. The woman's face kept appearing in his mind. Another human here on this ship of nightmares. Was she the only other survivor? The next morning, instead of Krell, Commander Drax came to Jack's cell. Your knowledge of engineering is impressive, Drax said. You understand our systems quickly. Jack shrugged. Machines follow rules. Doesn't matter who built them. Indeed. Drax studied him. You will work with our engineers now, help improve efficiency. This was what Jack had been waiting for. Access to ship systems, less security, a chance to do something. What about the other human? Jack asked. Drax's eyes flashed. Female scientist, studies communication, not your concern. Could I talk to her? It's been a long time since I spoke to another human. The commander was silent for a moment. Perhaps, if you prove useful. As Drax turned to leave, Jack asked one more question. Where are we going? What's our destination? Drax looked back at him with those cold, blue crystal eyes. Your Mars colony. Biggest human settlement outside Earth. Good place to demonstrate what happens to those who enter Vex space. The door closed, leaving Jack alone with this terrifying knowledge. Mars colony had 15 million people. The Vex planned to kill them all as a warning. He had to do something. But what could one human do against a warship of advanced aliens? Jack sat on his hard bed and thought about the ship's systems, about the woman scientist, about Mars colony, and its millions of innocent people. There had to be a way, some weakness in the Vex ship, some plan he could make. He wasn't meant to survive the attack on the horizon, but he had. And now, the fate of millions might depend on what he did next. Jack lay back and closed his eyes, going through everything he'd learned about the Vex ship's systems in his mind. The direct connection between the reactor and weapons, the coolant system layout, the communication array he'd glimpsed during one tour. Slowly, an idea began to form, a dangerous, desperate idea, but maybe, just maybe, it might work. Jack's new job in the engineering section of the Vex ship started the next day. 2 guards took him from his cell to a large room filled with humming machines. 5 Vex engineers with green markings worked there, checking screens and adjusting controls. Human will work here, one guard told the chief engineer, a Vex with extra green marks on all 4 arms. Commander's orders. The chief engineer looked at Jack with what seemed like doubt in its crystal eyes. Can it understand our systems? I can, Jack said. And I have a name. Jack Wilson. The chief engineer made the stone-grinding sound that Jack now knew was Vex laughter. I am Tekla, first engineer. You will assist with efficiency improvements. Jack was given a small work area with a screen showing ship systems. The Vex language was strange, full of symbols that changed shape, depending on their meaning, but Jack was starting to understand the basic patterns. Technical information was easier to figure out than conversation. For 3 days, Jack worked on small problems. He found ways to improve power flow in non-critical systems. Nothing that would help the Vex weapons or engines, but enough to prove he was useful. Tekla seemed impressed. You understand well for a human, the chief engineer said on the 3rd day. Perhaps your species is not as primitive as we thought. We just think differently, Jack said carefully. Sometimes a different view finds solutions others miss. That night, back in his cell, Jack was surprised when the door opened after dinner. Krell stood there. Come, the second battle leader said. Commander has reward for your good work. Jack followed Krell through the ship's twisted corridors until they reached a new section. Krell stopped at a door and opened it. Inside was a small room similar to Jack's cell, but with 2 beds instead of 1. On the second bed sat the human woman Jack had seen before. She looked up as the door opened. Her eyes widened when she saw Jack. Another human? She said, standing quickly. She was tall and thin with short brown hair. A small scar crossed her left eyebrow. Talking time, Krell said. 1 hour, then guards return. The door closed, leaving Jack alone with the woman. "I'm Lieutenant Jack Wilson, Engineering Division, HFY Horizon," he said quickly. "Who are you?" "Dr. Anna Reed, Xenobiology Research Station on Outpost 7, she replied. "They attacked without warning 3 weeks ago, killed everyone else." Jack nodded. "Same with my ship. I only survived because I stayed behind to stabilize the reactor during evacuation." Anna sat back down on her bed. "Why are they keeping us alive?" "They want to learn about humans before they decide if we're worth letting live," Jack said grimly. "I've been helping in engineering to gain their trust." Anna's eyes narrowed. "You're helping them? They destroyed my entire research team." "I'm helping them with small things to learn about their ship," Jack whispered, moving closer. "I think there might be a way to stop them before they reach Mars." Anna's anger changed to interest. "Mars? That's their target?" Jack nodded. 15 million people. They want to make an example of what happens when a species enters Vex space. He lowered his voice even more. "I need to know. What have they had you doing?" "Analyzing human communication patterns," Anna said quietly. "They're trying to understand our distress signals, our military codes. I've been giving them old, outdated information, but I don't know how long I can keep that up." Jack took a deep breath. "I think we might be able to work together on something, but it's dangerous. We'll probably die." Anna gave a small, sad smile. "I've been dead since they took me. What's your plan?" Jack glanced at the door to make sure no guards were watching through the small window. "The Vex ship has a design flaw. Their reactor connects directly to their weapon systems with no safety buffers." "And?" Anna asked. "If someone could overload the coolant system while the weapons are firing at full power, the feedback would cause a chain reaction. The whole ship would explode." Anna thought for a moment. "You can do this from engineering?" Jack shook his head. "Not alone. I need access to the main coolant control, but it's in a restricted area. And even if I got there, I'd need at least 15 minutes uninterrupted to reroute everything. The second they notice, they'll stop me." "So you need a distraction," Anna said. "More than that," Jack replied. "I need someone to send a warning to Mars. Tell them about the Vex fleet, their weapons, their weaknesses." Anna's eyes lit up. "I'm in the communications section. They've been having me analyze human signals, but the equipment works both ways. If I could get access during an emergency—" "Exactly," Jack said. "But we need that emergency first." They spent the next half hour planning. The Vex ship would reach Mars in just over 2 weeks. They needed to act before then, when the ship was still far enough away that the warning would give Mars time to prepare. "There's an asteroid field between here and Mars," Anna said. "They'll need to drop out of faster-than-light travel to navigate it safely. That's when ship systems will be under most stress." Jack nodded excitedly. "Perfect. During asteroid navigation, power fluctuations would be normal. They won't notice my changes to the coolant system right away. And communication will be disrupted by the asteroids, which gives you cover for sending a message." "But how do I get to the communication array? And how do you get to the main coolant control?" Anna asked. "We're always under guard," Jack thought for a moment. "I've been gaining Tekla's trust. A few more days of good work and I might get more access. As for you—" Anna finished his thought. "During an emergency, security will be lighter. I could maybe overpower a single guard if I surprise them." The door suddenly opened. Krell stood there. "Time finished." Jack stood up. "Thank you for letting us talk," he said respectfully. "It helps our work to share human perspectives." Krell seemed pleased. "Commander thinks keeping you functional is important. May allow more talking time." As Jack was led back to his cell, his mind raced. Their plan had huge risks, but it was the only chance to save Mars. Now he needed to gain even more trust from the Vex engineers. Over the next 5 days, Jack worked, harder than ever. He found a way to improve the ship's life support efficiency by 8%. Not a critical system, but enough to impress Tekla. "Your work good," the chief engineer told him. "Strange methods, but results acceptable." "Thank you," Jack said. "I've been studying your coolant systems. The design is fascinating. Tekla's crystal eyes brightened with what Jack had learned was pride. Most advanced in Vex fleet. My design improvements. Jack nodded enthusiastically. I noticed the connection points near Section 12 have unusual flow patterns. Is that intentional? Yes. Increases cooling efficiency during weapons fire, Tekla explained, bringing up the system on a large screen. See? Coolant diverts to weapons during firing sequence. Jack tried not to show his excitement. Tekla was showing him exactly what he needed to see. Brilliant. And the emergency controls? In case of coolant leak? Main control here. Tekla pointed to a section on the ship's diagram. Can reroute all coolant from this station. Backup systems here, here, and here. Jack memorized the locations. Section 42. Just 2 corridors from the main engineering room. He now knew exactly where he needed to go. That night, Jack lay awake in his cell, running through the plan again and again. Tomorrow he would ask Krell for another meeting with Anna to finalize everything. The ship's systems showed they would reach the asteroid field in 3 days. That was when they would make their move. As he drifted to sleep, Jack thought about his crewmates from the horizon. He hoped some of the evacuation pods had reached safety. He hoped they had warned Earth about the Vex. Most of all, he hoped that what he and Anna were about to attempt would work. If not, millions would die, and humanity would face an enemy they weren't prepared for. Jack wasn't just an engineer anymore. He was a soldier in a war that had started without warning, a war that might end before most humans even knew it had begun. He wasn't meant to survive the attack on his ship, but he had. Now he had to make that survival mean something. Asteroid field approaching, announced the ship's system in the harsh clicking language of the Vex. All crew prepare for navigation sequence. Jack was at his workstation in engineering when the announcement came. His heart began to beat faster. Today was the day. He had met with Anna one more time 2 days ago. They had gone over their plan again, checking for any problems they might have missed. Everything was ready. Human, called Tekla from across the engineering room. Monitor coolant, pressure during asteroid field. Alert if levels change. Yes, Tekla, Jack replied, trying to sound normal. This was exactly what he had hoped for, a direct assignment to watch the coolant systems. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Outside, the asteroid field waited, thousands of rocks ranging from car-sized to mountain-sized, all floating in the darkness of space. Shields at maximum, ordered Commander Drax's voice over the ship's communication system. Weapons ready. Begin navigation. Jack watched as power levels across the ship changed. Shields drew more energy. Engines switched to precise maneuvering mode. The weapon systems powered up to destroy any asteroids too large to avoid. Tekla moved to the main control panel, all 4 arms working quickly to adjust systems. The other engineers were equally busy at their stations. Nobody was watching Jack. He pressed a sequence on his control panel that he had prepared yesterday, a small program hidden in the system diagnostics. It would show normal readings at his station while he was gone. Jack glanced around one more time, then slipped away from his work area and through the small maintenance door at the back of the engineering room. The corridor beyond was empty. All crew were at their stations for asteroid navigation. Jack moved quickly but quietly. He had memorized the path to Section 42, where the main coolant control was located. Left at the first junction, right at the second through the narrow passage that connected the crew areas. The ship shook as it maneuvered around a large asteroid. Alarms sounded briefly but then stopped. Normal procedure, Jack hoped. He reached Section 42 without seeing any Vex. The door was locked, but Jack had prepared for this too. During his work in engineering, he had noticed the Vex used simple code patterns for door access. He had memorized Tekla's code from watching the chief engineer. Jack entered the code. The door slid open. The coolant control room was small and empty. A circular panel dominated the center, with tubes running from it into the walls, floor, and ceiling. This was the heart of the ship's cooling system. Jack got to work immediately. He knew he had 15 minutes at most before someone noticed. He was missing. First, he accessed the main control panel. The VEX system was complex, but Jack had studied it carefully during his time in engineering. He began rerouting the coolant flows, creating a pattern that would look normal at first but would fail catastrophically when the weapons fired at full power. The ship shook again, harder this time. A direct hit from an asteroid, or maybe they had fired the weapons to destroy one in their path. Jack stumbled but kept working. "Warning," said the ship's system in VEX language. "Unusual power fluctuations in Section 38. Jack froze. Section 38. That was where the communication array was located. Anna must be making her move. He worked faster. The coolant rerouting was halfway done. He needed more time. Anna Reed had been waiting for the asteroid field. When the first shudder ran through the ship, she knew it was time. The VEX guard watching her work at the communication array was distracted, looking at the alert signals flashing on the wall. Anna had noticed that this particular guard was younger than the others, its crystal eyes a lighter shade of purple. Less experienced, she hoped. She stood up suddenly. "I need to check the signal amplifier," she said, pointing to a panel on the far side of the room. The guard made a noise of annoyance but nodded. The VEX wanted her to keep working during the asteroid field passage, to analyze how human ships communicated during navigation challenges. Anna walked to the panel, her heart pounding. Behind it was a heavy metal tool she had hidden 3 days ago when the guard had been called away briefly for a ship-wide security check. She opened the panel, grabbed the tool, and turned in one smooth motion. The guard was looking at the asteroid field through the viewport, its back to her. Anna didn't hesitate. She swung the tool with all her strength at the back of the guard's head, right where she had noticed a gap in its armor. The guard dropped without a sound. Anna rushed to the communication array. She had very little time. Once she sent a message to Mars, the VEX would know something was wrong. She quickly adjusted the array to human emergency frequencies. Mars Colony monitored these channels constantly. Then she began recording. Emergency. Alert to Mars Colony. This is Dr. Anna Reed, sole survivor of Outpost 7. The research station was destroyed by alien attackers called the VEX. They are heading towards Mars with a fleet of warships. Their weapons can penetrate our strongest shields. They plan to destroy the colony as a warning to humanity. She paused, thinking of what else Mars needed to know. The VEX ships have a critical weakness. Their reactor connects directly to their weapon systems with no safety buffers. Concentrated fire on their weapon ports during full firing sequences could trigger a chain reaction. I repeat, target weapon ports when they're firing. The ship shook again. Anna nearly fell, but caught herself on the edge of the console. This message sent by Lieutenant Jack Wilson of UES Horizon and Dr. Anna Reed of Outpost 7. We are attempting to disable the lead ship from within. Don't wait for us. Prepare defenses immediately. 20 ships approaching, estimated arrival. A loud alarm blared through the ship. Anna's message had been detected. She quickly pressed the transmit button. The message began streaming out into space aimed at Mars. Anna didn't know if it would reach them. The asteroid field might block or distort the signal, but it was their only chance. The door to the communication room slid open. 2 VEX security guards stood there, weapons raised. Anna raised her hand slowly. "It's too late," she said. "Mars knows you're coming now." Jack heard the alarm and knew what it meant. Anna had been discovered. The ship's security would be on high alert now. He had finished about 80% of the coolant rerouting. Not enough to guarantee destruction of the ship, but maybe enough to cripple it if he could complete the most critical connections. The door to the coolant control room slid open behind him. Jack didn't need to turn around to know who it was. "Human," said Commander Drax's deep voice. "You disappoint me." Jack kept working, his fingers flying over the control panel. Just a few more adjustments. "Step away from the controls," Drax ordered. "Now." Jack ignored him, completing one more critical connection. Then something hot struck his back. Pain exploded through his body as he fell to the floor. "Bring the female human," Drax said to someone Jack couldn't see. "They will both answer for this betrayal." Jack tried to stand but couldn't. The weapon had damaged something in his spine. He could barely move his legs. 2 guards dragged Anna into the room. She had a cut on her forehead, but her eyes were clear and defiant. "Did it send?" Jack whispered, when they dropped her beside him. Anna nodded slightly. "Full message. Don't know if it got through the asteroids." "Enough talking," Drax said. "You have damaged ship systems during dangerous navigation. You have sent unauthorized communications. You have attacked Vex crew. Such actions have only one punishment." The commander raised a weapon, a short, curved blade that glowed with energy. "Wait," came another voice. Krell entered the coolant control room. "Commander, what have the humans done?" "Sabotage," Drax said. "Betrayal, after we showed mercy." Krell looked at Jack, crystal eyes showing what might have been disappointment. "Is this true, Jack Wilson?" Jack found enough strength to raise his head. "You're going to kill 15 million innocent people. What would you have done in my place?" The second battle leader was silent for a moment. Then, "Commander, the human has logic. They protect their kind as we protect ours." "Irrelevant," Drax snapped. "They must be eliminated as examples." The ship suddenly shook violently, much harder than before. Warning alarms blared from every panel in the room. "Large asteroid approaching," announced the ship's system. "Collision imminent. All weapons to maximum power." Jack felt a surge of hope. This was exactly what he needed. The weapons firing at full power while his sabotaged coolant system was active. "Take the humans to the bridge," Drax ordered. "They will watch their colony's destruction before they die." As the guards lifted, Jack and Anna, the ship's weapons fired, the massive energy discharge rumbling through the vessel, and deep within the coolant system, Jack's sabotage began to work. Pressure built where it shouldn't. Heat increased in systems that couldn't handle it. Power surged through connections never meant to carry such loads. The first explosion was small, just a coolant pipe bursting in Section 40. The second, in engineering, was larger. By the third explosion, it was already too late for the Vex ship. "What is happening?" Commander Drax demanded as another explosion rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed across every panel in the coolant control room. Alarms blared in the harsh Vex language, announcing system failures throughout the vessel. "Coolant. System failure in sections 38 through 42, reported a frantic engineer over the communication system. "Weapon systems overheating. Reactor pressure rising beyond safe levels." Drax turned to Jack, who was still on the floor, barely able to move from his injury. The commander's crystal eyes flashed with rage. "What have you done, human?" he growled. Despite his pain, Jack managed a small smile. "I'm an engineer. I fixed your ship, just not the way you wanted." Another explosion, larger than the ones before, shook the entire vessel. The lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the room. "Commander!" Krell shouted over the noise. "We must evacuate. Reactor. Containment failing." Drax stood frozen for a moment, crystal eyes fixed on Jack. Then he seemed to make a decision. "Evacuate all essential personnel to secondary vessels," he ordered. "The human female comes with us as specimen." "What about this one?" Krell asked, pointing at Jack. Drax looked down at the injured human engineer. "Leave him. His damage to our ship has earned him the right to die with it." The guards picked up Anna, who struggled against their grip. "Jack," she called out. "I won't leave you." "Go," Jack shouted back. "Live. Make sure Mars is ready." Krell hesitated, looking down at Jack. The second battle leader seemed conflicted. "He fought well for his people," Krell said quietly. "A warrior's death." Then they were gone, dragging Anna with them. Jack was alone in the coolant control room as the ship died around him. He tried to pull himself up using the control panel, but his legs wouldn't support him. The weapon had damaged something in his spine. He wasn't going anywhere. "Ship-wide evacuation ordered," announced the Vex system. "Reactor breach imminent. Estimated time to critical failure, 12 minutes. Jack looked around the room. He had done it. The ship was going to explode. Anna had sent the warning to Mars. Even if the Vex took her with them, humanity would be ready when the fleet arrived. But 12 minutes was a long time to wait for death. With great effort, Jack pulled himself across the floor toward the door. Maybe he could at least see what was happening. Maybe there was still something he could do. The corridor outside was in chaos. Emergency lights flashed. Steam hissed from broken pipes. Occasional explosions still rocked the ship as systems failed. But no Vex remained in this section. They had all evacuated. Jack dragged himself along using only his arms. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he didn't want to die in that small room. After several minutes of painful crawling, he reached a viewport. Outside, he could see small ships launching from the Vex vessel, escape pods carrying the crew to safety. In the distance, the asteroid field loomed, its massive rocks drifting slowly through the darkness of space. Reactor. Containment at 20%, the ship's system announced. Critical failure in 8 minutes. 8 minutes to live. Jack leaned against the viewport wall, exhausted from his efforts. He had done everything he could. Now all he could do was wait. Then something caught his eye. A different kind of ship launching from the lower section of the Vex vessel. It wasn't a Vex escape pod. It was sleeker, smaller. Jack recognized it immediately. It was a human shuttle. The Vex must have captured it from one of the outposts they destroyed. And now someone was using it to escape. A new energy filled Jack. If he could reach that shuttle bay, maybe he could find another human vessel. Maybe he could escape too. It was probably impossible. He could barely move. The ship was falling apart, around him. He had only 8 minutes before everything exploded, but Jack Wilson had never believed in giving up. With renewed determination, he began dragging himself toward where he thought the shuttle bay might be. Each movement sent pain shooting through his body, but he kept going. Left at a junction, right at another, following signs in the Vex language that he had learned to read during his time on the ship. Reactor containment at 10%, announced the system. Critical failure in 5 minutes. Jack kept moving. Another explosion rocked the ship, throwing him against a wall. Something fell from the ceiling, narrowly missing his head. The air was getting hotter as cooling systems failed throughout the vessel. Finally, he reached a large door marked with Vex symbols for external vessels. The shuttle bay. The door was partially open, jammed during the evacuation. Jack squeezed through the gap and into the massive chamber beyond. Most of the bay was empty. The Vex had taken their escape vessels. But in one corner, Jack saw what he was looking for, another human shuttle. Smaller than the one he had seen launching, but still intact. With the last of his strength, Jack pulled himself toward it. The shuttle's door was open. Just a few more meters. Reactor containment at 5%, the system announced, its mechanical voice now distorted by damage. Critical failure in 2 minutes. Jack reached the shuttle and pulled himself inside. The controls were standard human design, similar to what he had used on the Horizon. His hands moved automatically, powering up systems, preparing for launch. The shuttle bay doors were already open from previous launches. Jack could see space beyond. Freedom, if he could reach it in time. Reactor containment failure, said the Vex system. Critical explosion imminent. Jack fired the shuttle's engines. The small vessel lifted off the bay floor and shot toward the open doors. Behind him, the Vex ship began to break apart as the damaged reactor finally gave way. The shuttle cleared the bay doors just as the first major explosion tore through the Vex vessel. The blast wave caught the small craft, sending it spinning out of control into the asteroid field. Jack fought with the controls, trying to stabilize the shuttle as pieces of the exploding Vex ship flew past him. The massive warship was coming, apart in a series of spectacular explosions, lighting up space like a newborn star. A proximity alarm blared. A large asteroid was directly in his path. Jack tried to steer around it, but the shuttle's controls were sluggish from damage. At the last moment, the asteroid moved, or seemed to. It took Jack a second to realize it wasn't an asteroid at all. It was a ship, a human ship. Unidentified shuttle, this is UES Defender, came a voice over the communication system. Do you require assistance? Jack could hardly believe what he was hearing. A human military vessel. They must have received Anna's warning and sent a scout ship to investigate. "This is Lieutenant Jack Wilson, formerly of UES Horizon," he replied, his voice weak but clear. "I require immediate assistance and have critical intelligence about an alien threat." "Wilson? From the Horizon?" The voice sounded shocked. "You're alive? Stand by for emergency docking. Medical team is preparing to receive you." As the UES defenders' docking bay opened to receive his damaged shuttle, Jack looked back at the remains of the Vex warship. It was now just scattered debris floating among the asteroids. He thought of Anna, taken by the fleeing Vex. He would find her. Somehow he would make sure she was rescued. But for now he had done what seemed impossible. He had survived. He had destroyed the enemy ship. And he had brought humanity the warning it needed. Jack Wilson wasn't meant to survive the attack on the Horizon. But because he had, millions of lives would be saved. As his shuttle was guided into the Defender's Bay, Jack finally allowed himself to close his eyes. For the first time since the Horizon was attacked, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Mars would be ready. Humanity would fight. And Jack would be there to help lead the way. The final explosion of the Vex warship lit up space behind him like a funeral pyre for those who had died, and like a beacon of warning for what was to come. The war had just begun.